So this is the second video that I have made about Sureño since he came into my hands, and on this video we're going to be talking about hooves and hoof care. The hooves of a horse are an amazing biological structure. We almost consider them an organ, a sensory organ, and these are really important to the horse. There's the saying, no hoof, no horse, right? But also there's the saying, no horse, no hoof. I talk about that more in my online course, Barefoot Basics, where I really kind of tell horse owners a lot more detailed information about hoof care, but in really simple English for people. But I'll avoid going into too much detail here today. But anytime you start talking about hooves around horse people, a lot of people start to get really upset with one another, and they can start to fight with one another because there's so many different attitudes and different belief systems, and people often get really heated about this conversation. I'm not interested in any kind of debate about hooves. I just want to talk about Sureño and his hooves and what I am doing with them and why. So Sureño is a horse who is in metal shoes. Like most horses who were born in Spain of very good bloodlines like he was probably in his first pair of shoes around the age of 2 years old, and he would have been in shoes for most of his life until now. He is now 9 years old. There are many elements that go into creating a really healthy hoof. Genetics, in my opinion, and based on the research, is one of those elements, but also diet, lifestyle, daily care, environment, even the training can impact on the hooves, pathologies and diseases of the horse, and finally, hoof care. I say hoof care because I avoid the term barefoot trimming, not because I have any problems about barefoot trimming, but because barefoot means that there's nothing on the foot. But the horse was born without metal shoes, so I'm just calling it a hoof, not a bare hoof. I call it hoof care because there's more to creating a healthy hoof than simply hiring a farrier and trimming every 6 to 8 weeks and picking them out before you ride. There's a lot more that goes into creating a really, really good foot, and I have really, really high standards for the feet of horses in my life because I want them to enjoy comfortable feet for their life. And if I'm interested in riding and training horses, I feel like they deserve to be comfortable and happy on the feet that they're standing on. Now, just because a horse is moving and looking spectacular in their movement doesn't necessarily mean that the hooves are comfortable. Sometimes shoes and very talented horses can hide lots of problems inside the feet that even the best of owners can't spot. I am not a normal kind of hoof care provider. Most hoof care providers are farriers or blacksmiths. They work with metal. I don't work with metal. This does not mean I'm not interested in protecting hooves. I will just use anything I can to protect the hooves except using metal on them. Now here's the part where I might upset people, but I say this without any judgment. The reason why I don't like to put metal on my personal horse's feet, unless as an absolute last resort, is because within the last 5 to 10 years, there have been many scientific studies done of really good quality that have shown us very, very confidently that metal, when it is permanently attached to the bottom of a hoof, particularly open-heeled shoes, causes long-term chronic damage to the health and soundness of the horse and the health of the hoof. This does not mean that all horses in shoes are being abused or neglected. This is not what I'm saying. I am just referring to the research that was not my personal research, but academic research. Because emotional horsemanship is interested in using science, empathy, and feel to create emotionally balanced horses, it is my responsibility and personal interest to stay up to date on the science that comes out on a regular basis about what is happening with horses exactly. So that is why I don't use metal, but I use boots, I use glue-on shoes, I use hoof hardeners, I'll use anything that I can before I put metal onto a horse. So as soon as Sureño came into my life, it was abundantly clear that I wanted to transfer him out of metal shoes back to his natural foot. When I saw him in Amsterdam, the first thing I did was picked up his feet and had a look at them, and I saw that there was a great challenge there for me. I love a challenge. I'm really interested in transforming hooves. I find the process really enjoyable and really interesting to watch. And so I saw how much I could help him. And considering I was probably the first barefoot person to meet this horse, I felt like I was breaking virgin territory, so it's been very exciting for me to kind of peel back the layers of his feet and see what's going on. Now, I want to make something really, really clear. Sureño's feet, when he arrived with me here in Spain, they didn't look great. This is 100% my fault. I'll say that again. This was 100% my fault. Matt reached out to me and he said, look, he's really due for a fresh shoeing. Do you want me to get him done? He's on the transport next week. We can get his shoes done so that he arrives with you with freshly done, properly put together feet. I said no. The reason why I said no is because shortly after Sureño was due to arrive with me in Spain, I was getting on a plane to disappear for 1 month to America to run horsemanship clinics, 6 horsemanship clinics across America for that month. And so this was my conundrum. If I put shoes on him just before I went to America, it would have to wait 6 to 8 weeks until I got back from America to begin his hoof transformation. So I would be beginning the hoof transformation today. I wanted to start his hoof transformation as soon as possible, but I didn't want to take his shoes off before he got on a truck to come to Spain, because if he was sore when the shoes come off, as many horses who are in shoes, they are sore when the shoes come off, I didn't want him standing on painful feet when he's on a truck for 3 days coming down to Spain. So I made the difficult decision, the compromise decision, that even though his feet were way overdue and not up to Matt's standard, that it would be my choice to leave him for a couple more weeks with the shoes that he had on now, and that as soon as he would get to Spain, I would take the shoes off and start his hoof transformation. Then, while I was in America, my wonderful livery managers, Ondine and Roy, would be tasked with implementing the daily care and solutions that I have acquired for Sureño and his unique hoof care situation while I am gone. It is now 6 weeks after I took off his shoes, and I'm really happy to report that we have fantastic results already. He has responded so quickly. And the reason why he has responded so quickly is because he had a really great foot to begin with. There were a couple of problems with it, but most horses have some problems with their feet. His feet were not worse than any other horse out there on average that you would see. In fact, his feet were actually rather above average compared to what I generally see out there in the industry. So even though I'm going to be showing before and after pictures, I'm having no judgment, no criticism of anyone involved in Sureño's care before me. I'm just talking about the horse that's in front of me now and what I am doing with him. So enough of that, let's jump into some videos, and what I want to show you is the process of taking off his shoes. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to condense it down, but if you're on Patreon, I'm going to show almost the whole process for you. And then towards the end, I want to show you some before and after pictures from day 1 to 6 weeks. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to share this one part of Sureño's journey with you. So here in this video, I'm starting the process of removing shoes, and I'm not the best at removing shoes because I don't work with metals, so I don't do it often. But all horse owners, especially horse owners who have horses with metal shoes on, need to be familiar with the process of taking off a shoe, because you never know when you might have to do it. So the first step is to file away the exterior of the nails as it sits on the outside of the hoof. You just have to file the tips off because they can block the passage of the nail as it comes out. And as I very quickly discovered, these shoes were really stuck, really stuck. And as I'm someone that doesn't remove shoes on a regular basis, it was hard work for both of us. So I was taking plenty of breaks to stop and say thank you, because he's a really good boy. I mean, really good boy. So now I'm taking out the nails, being really careful as I go. Like I said, because I don't do it often and he's the only horse I have to do this day, I can really take my time and sort of luxuriate in the process, check really carefully that I'm getting everything off. And after a few minutes, there we go. We got it off. And here we go. You can really see how old the shoe was. Yeah, you can see how the toe kind of worn down on one side more than the other. So that's 4 to go. And I discovered that the shoes are really stuck. Let's just have a little look here what it looks like when the shoe came off. This is the right front, this is left front, sorry. And as we are to discover that this foot had canker, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And so now I'm working on the right front, again shaving off the top of the nails before I pick it up and loosen the shoe a little. And then once I've loosened the shoe, I tap it down slightly so that I can pull the nails out. It releases the nails, and then I pull them out one by one, putting them somewhere out of the way. If you're working with horseshoes or if you're working with horses, period, it's a really good idea to be up to date with your tetanus vaccination because you're dealing with metal. Tetanus is still a thing. Okay, and that's the right front. Let's have a look what these are like. So there's some discrepancies. So he's landing heel first on the lateral. You can see there's a discrepancy here. Lateral flare. Wow. Waha! So I'm continuing with the hind feet, and as I was to discover, these were really stuck on his hind feet. I mean, really stuck. And so as I was leveraging the shoe, it was quite uncomfortable for him. And yeah, it was really stuck. And I persevered. I took plenty of breaks. I eventually came back and I did manage to get all the shoes off, but it just was nasty work to get it off. Really nasty work. So no matter how long it takes, you get it done. And so I just wanted to walk him around for a bit just to give myself a break. It was also starting to heat up, and this was the day after he arrived, so you can imagine I was already pretty tired myself. There had been a lot to organize, and I work full time and I've got other horses, and so I was pretty tired at this point, and I just wanted to see how he was walking now the shoes were off on the fronts and before he had a trim. And he's kind of walking like he's got clown shoes on, like he's kind of lifting the foot and he's not rolling through the foot like he needs to. And yeah, normal when the feet are as long as they are, but also the shape that they are. So yeah, I did eventually get the shoes off, but I took a break on that other right hind because it was very stuck, and I proceeded with the left hind was very stuck, and I proceeded with the right hind. And again, also very stuck, and you can see once I started to leverage on the shoe that it was uncomfortable for him because they had been stuck on, really stuck on, taking lots of breaks. Hoof care is really hard work. You've got to love it, and you've got to love the results. And anyone who trims their own horses eventually has a newfound respect for full-time farriers and blacksmiths and hoof care providers.
It's hot shoed and they're long, so he's been pounding them into his feet, and they're just like glued on. So, gotten all but 4 of the nails out. If I walk him around, you'll hear how loose they are. So they're probably going to come off in a few days on their own.
Yeah, so I took him for another little walk just to see how he's feeling on that. And also just to test him and see how he is with his behavior over lengthy procedures. And as you can see, he's pretty bloody good. Yeah. I eventually got the shoes off and disposed of them correctly and safely with a blacksmith who visited the stable the following day. I left the shoes with him for him to safely dispose of them. Please remember that metal, when it comes out of a horse's foot, can be considered a biohazard. So please be very careful when handling these objects, or if you see nails around the stable, pick them up and dispose of them properly. Next I moved on to trimming him, and I start first with nipping, and I'm going to nip the hoof wall because when the hoof wall is too long it causes leverage, stresses the lamina, causes flaring, seedy toe, all sorts of problems when the hoof wall is too long. This is one of the big differences between blacksmithing and barefoot trimming is totally different treatment of the hoof wall and alignment of weight-bearing structures. So here, instead of continuing to trim the other foot, I went ahead and nipped the leverage off the other front foot with plenty of breaks for him and for me. Because I want to consider trimming a little bit like paint by numbers. First you start with the big things and then you slowly refine as you go. So I'm just sort of making the big changes and then seeing how that settles in his body. There's a lot of material to remove, so I'm going to take another break, give him a break too. Both of us can just take a second, get to know each other. So as I took a break with him here, I also introduced to him some Surefoot pads, which are proprioceptive rehabilitation tools. I'm even using the foams on top of straw. This is something I'm going to explain a lot more in a further video when I start talking about his physical retraining with me, but at this point he starts to tell me here really clearly that his left front is sore. You can see he doesn't want to stand on it, even on soft straw with a foam on top. So yes, he was quite sore on that left front. And towards the end of this video, I'll show exactly why and what we did to fix it, because it's already mostly resolved. So at this point, I tidied up his trim as best as I could for that week, and I came back 1 week later, which is this video here in the fly sheet. So this is already 1 week later after the first trim. And this time I'm now going to properly trim his hinds, which is what I did. On the first week I just took the shoes off. I left his hinds and trimmed his fronts because his fronts were the most urgent. But for this trim I'm going to properly trim all four as best as I could. Enough of a trimming to last him until I got back from America in 4.5 weeks, 5-6 weeks time. Even by the time I got home it would be 6 weeks until I saw him again. So yeah, I'm going ahead and trimming all of the feet now, and this is probably a good time while I'm doing this just to talk about Canker. So what we discovered is that his left front hoof inside the central sulcus, which is that little hole in the center of the frog, underneath the overgrown foot and underneath the shoe, Sureño had a mild canker infection. Now, what is canker? Many people don't know what this is. A lot of us are familiar with thrush. Thrush is also a bacterial infection. Canker is a bacterial infection. Thrush produces a black, sticky, smelly liquid, like a paste. And this pasty bacteria eats away at the hoof. It dissolves the hoof. Canker works the opposite. It's also a bacterial infection, but instead of eating away at the hoof, it causes a strange growth on the hoof, and this growth looks like a white, spongy cauliflower type texture. This growth has a high blood supply, so it bleeds very easily. It can be incredibly painful. It can invade the whole hoof if not recognized and taken under control. His infection was mild, in my opinion, and I was very excited to help him with it. I had no idea how long it would take. Some people said that he would need to have a surgery, but I've managed to cure it in a 6-week period without a surgery using a mixture of nutraceutical and pharmaceuticals, so natural medicine and medicine to eliminate the canker. And later when I've got the photographs up, I will show you what that exactly looks like. As you can see, this lovely stallion is also totally at liberty. He hardly knows me, and he's got a foot in my lap and I'm trimming him. That goes to show the quality of the care he had received in his previous home, how happy he is generally. and how well he had been cared for, because that is not normal. So credit to Matt and everyone who had him before me, because he's just an amazingly well developed mentally horse. He's just so happy in his own skin. He takes a bit of time to get to know you. He's a bit standoffish with you at first. That's something I'll talk about more in subsequent videos, but the fact that you can take a stallion and trim him like this, free and loose, with plenty of food in front of him, really is a credit to not only his character, but the care he had long before me. So I'm really taking my time to perfect this trim as much as I can. And beyond the trim, I am also using various other products, and maybe it's a good time to talk about that now. So this is a product called Hoof Armor, and I'm really crazy about it, especially over the last 18 months. It's very affordable, so it's not expensive. It's incredibly easy to apply, it's user-friendly, and it's very safe to work with. This is a chemical, so if you are uncomfortable putting chemicals on your horse's hoof or body, just don't use it. But what Hoof Armor is a bacterial killer and a hoof hardener. So when you apply this in a thin coating, it stops the hoof from wearing down, so you can put it in places where you don't want the hoof to wear. For Sureño'S case, his heels, I want him to grow more heel. And you can use it in places where bacteria likes to collect. So if you have white line disease, thrushy frogs, thrushy soles, thrushy heels, you can apply a thin layer of Hoof Armor. It will stay on for 4 to 6 weeks unless in excessively abrasive conditions or until trimmed off. Again, affordable, easy to apply, kills bacteria, makes the horse's hooves hard and strong. It's a no-brainer for me, so I'm using this on all 4 of his feet in places where I don't want bacteria to grow and where I want strength to build. The other product I'm using is a homemade thrush mud or a paddock mud or a paddock paste. I make this myself because it's cost effective for me to do so, and I have a source where I can purchase all of the ingredients within Europe on my own. So I make this in large quantities, and it has yet to fail me in killing and controlling thrush within the hooves when used properly. I share this recipe in my online course Barefoot Basics and with my Hoof Care coaching clients in Hoof School Online. And so, of course, I was putting this onto Sureño'S feet, all 4, and we were doing this for 6 weeks. I just stopped because the thrush is now under control. And of course, I'm also using hoof boots on him, especially important for his front feet, considering the pain he's experiencing in the left front due to the canker, which I'm going to show you in a minute. I love to use equine fusions because they're a really good mixture between a rehabilitation boot and a performance boot, so I don't have to have 2. I can have 1 boot that I can use both for training and for rehabilitation, and as you can see from today, he's feeling a lot more comfortable wearing these now that we've got some changes happening in the feet, and their shock absorbing properties are second to none. So this is the before and after section of this video. This is the 8-day time lapse. The feet look better today because it's 6.5 weeks after the fact, but I just want to get you up to speed with what they looked like a week after intervention began. So this is the right front foot as he got off the truck. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm just going to leave the pictures here to let them speak for themselves. On Patreon, I will go slower with these photographs and explain what I'm seeing on the foot and what's happening to the foot from a functional mechanics perspective, and I'll try to use simple English to explain that. And so this is after. This is 8 days later after I had finished my setup trim with him. 8 days later, after pulling the shoes and setting the feet up barefoot, this is what they looked like. It included 2 trims and 8 days, and so I was happy to leave these feet as they were, and I could go to America now. So that was after, sorry, that's before. Okay, and that's after. That's a setup trim. And so I went to America. Alright, let's look at the next. So this is the left front, this was his worst hoof. This is the one with the canker that I've spoken about on the video, so you can see in the center there, that's the canker, that kind of cauliflower looking stuff in the middle of the foot, middle of the crack of the foot, the central sulcus, that's the canker. Okay, so this was the before. And this is 8 days later after the setting up trims. Remember, he's got boots, hoof hardeners, antibacterials. I've also intervened with an antibiotic on the canker, which I think I'm going to talk about in a separate video. That's a deeper view of the canker. I've exposed it there so that we can kill it. This was 8 days. Now, as I'm recording this, it is 6.5 weeks after this video, and I'm pleased to report that the canker is gone, but I'm going to leave that for another video. I'm going to leave you waiting for that. If you follow me on Instagram, you will be able to see this result already. So that was the before. Okay, and that is the after the setup trim. So then I went to America, and 6 weeks later the canker was done, but I'm going to let you wait for me to show you what that looks like here on YouTube or Patreon. So this is the left hind. I'm desperate to show you what they look like now, 6 weeks after these photos were taken, but I've got to leave you guys something to look forward to. I've got to keep you guys patient and hungry for more. So I just want to show you the first step. This already is a lot of information, and so this was after the setup trims were complete of the left hind. Okay, so that was before, when he got off the truck with me, and that's after a setup trim. And here's the right hind with the shoe on, and coming next is the after photographs after the setup trim. Now I need to say setup trims are usually pretty rough and pretty minimal and not very refined, because you're just making the most important changes needed to set the hooves up in a good way, and so this trim was. It's pretty rough, it's pretty basic, it's pretty straightforward, it's not refined yet because I'm just wanting to set the hoof up for what's going to happen next to it. So this is before. It's very nervous sharing this with you guys. And then after. Okay,